Hello. I'm going to go over how to create the up-close blur from whenever you're aiming your weapon or even having the weapon close to you in first person. This is kind of like how they do in Destiny and some of the other modern games where they're blurring the nearby camera. It's actually pretty simple. I won't build this from the start, but I will at least give you the values that I use that I've learned over time. You just create a fresh material. I called mine, since it's a post-process material, ppm underscore custom depth. And then I made sure that the material domain was set to post-process. And then one other thing here is under blendable location. Set it to scene color after DOF, depth of field, and that'll be it as far as the configuration of the material. And then on the material, all you'll have is your emissive color output. So you'll see a little bit of repetitiveness going on here. This is basically creating a fake blur, but you'll have some ways to adjust it to either make the blur more intense or even adjust the depth of how deep from the camera the blur goes. But all this is actually doing is creating, I guess you could say, like splitting the image. And I have the image splitting in 8 different locations that are very subtly nearby each other. And in doing so creates a blur effect. Yes, it's fake blur, but for performance that's actually better. If you're going for the real blur, then you would want to modify the actual camera depth of field, which I have found to actually be trickier than doing something this way. So started with this blur amount. It's a const of 0.2. And then from here, hopefully it all makes sense. Just got multiple scene textures of the post-process input, and it's just 8 of them. And you can keep doing more and adding more math behind it if you wanted to, but I have found this works quite nicely. Let me spread a little bit of this out here. Again, I'm not going to rebuild this from scratch. I've just seen multiple questions about this effect, and there's really no info about it, and just thought I would share how I set mine up. You could see here, or if you need to pause it, all I'm getting are small XY values and offsetting these scene textures by a very, very small amount. And you can just essentially copy paste once you get one set of the 2D vector here, and then the multiply and an add, and then the scene texture set to post-process input. And from there it is copy paste, and the only real difference are these the X and Y values. And then down here, I do the exact same thing. Again, the only thing different are the XY values all the way down. Giving it some time for people to pause and copy because it is a lot of repetitive nodes and numbers. From there, you do an add node to add these two together, an add node to add these two together, an add node to add the two adds together. Same thing down here, repeating. And then all of that gets added into a final add node. Then you go into a divide node. And I will change some of these values in a minute once we go over the whole thing here, and I will show you the difference that these small values can make on the blur. So you have one more scene texture post-process input. This is from a lerp, and it goes into your emissive color. Then down here in the distance blend, this is where you adjust the blur amount and the blur depth. Scene texture, scene depth. We subtract with do a constant. These are my values. I don't like it super heavily blurred, but definitely blurred enough, enough to see the difference. Mask of the red channel. Multiply. Do the clamp between 0 and 1, and then put that into your alpha for the lerp. And that is the entire material. I know I'm not going over every single node. Some of it's been a long time since I put this together, and it'd be harder to explain for myself. So, but hopefully this will give you the effect that you're looking for. Now, if I were to come over here to the blur multiplier, again 0.2 seems to put all of these together very nicely. But if I were to, just to show the effect, bump this up to, say, 2. We'll give this a quick M apply, and then we'll come to test area. You'll see exactly what it's doing. So because I told that multiplier to spread out those nodes, now you are seeing all of those layers. So I have found that there's a sweet number of 0.2, and that makes it feel more like a blur. Now, something to demonstrate this division helps with the overall look of the blur. I notice when you do smaller numbers, the blur will actually light up to show you the area of effect. Now, my blur is blurring between the camera and to about halfway down the barrel of the gun. That's about as far as I personally wanted it to go. But if I were to come here and adjust these values, so blur depth, the higher the number, the further out the blur goes. So if I put this at 40, you can now see that the entire weapon is blurred, or is lit up, showing the depth of the blur. I'll put this back to 25. And then we have the blur amount. This actually will go, the higher the number, the clearer it is. So you could put a value of 0.01. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me put this back to 8. That seemed to be the happy number that keeps the color change from happening. And now you can see the pistol and hand are very blurry. So it's just a matter of playing with the numbers depending on what it is that you are looking for. And again, I am a fan of just putting it at 0.1, blur depth at 25, blur multiplier 0.2, and then this final divide at 8. And then everything else is shown as is here. Now, last thing I want to show is you can do this one of two ways as far as getting the material to show. We have to activate the material. So we do have, you could do a post-process volume, and right here you have post-process materials. Here's your array. We will choose asset reference. It's looking for it, so I'm going to grab that little arrow, and then now it's active. So if I get near something, there's that blur. But as a developer, when I'm needing to get really close to something and see what it's doing. Well, it's kind of hard to develop when everything's blurry. So what I did in my main character, I did convert all of this to just C++, but this is also the blueprint version. So I have my first-person camera. I set post-process settings. I am making the post-process settings. And if you scroll all the way to the very bottom, rendering features, there's post-process materials. You can check that box. It'll obviously give you an array. You could make the array. I split the struct pin, and then I added in that ppm custom depth. And by default, the weight will be -1. This will not work. That keeps it off, so you want to put the weight at 1. So if I were to disconnect that, you'll see we are crystal clear. If I were to connect to this one, the same way I have it going in the C++, you will see the same effect. Nice and blurry. So either direction works great, and that's pretty much the setup.